Hey everyone, as I'm looking here, looks like everything's in working order. Today, the day I'm filming this is the day after the Packers played, and I thought, just for a little token, as I always do, I thought I would wear something related to them for the day after when they win. So, still alive. But now that I'm thinking about it, I actually found this hat on the floor of my fiance's car, and it's been there for a long time. So, well, today's Sunday, and if you can maybe tell, I actually just got up from a nap a little bit ago. I've been enjoying my long weekend, and I hope that you've all been doing the same or were able to do so. We're going to get into our second day of Alexander the Great here, and let's get into it right away. I'm hoping to get done with it relatively quickly here. But a couple things that we should look at as we are getting ready. So, into Google Classroom for today. Just this week's been really heavy with a lot of stuff. I know Tuesday I had you do the Socratic worksheet. We did a Socratic seminar. And then yesterday you were supposed to do a reflection on that Socratic seminar. It's a lot. So for today's warm up, all I'm asking you to do is just make the copy of the notes, click done, and then submit it, and you'll get a point. Simple as that. Okay. Your exit ticket's going to be 5 questions today. That is going to be the trade off. But hopefully, if you're able to have this up while you're going through the video, you can maybe answer it while the video is going on. I think that's really smart. And I'll try my best to remember when I go through a specific question to bring it up. But just take a look. The first one is going to be from Tuesday's notes. So there's one that you could answer before we even get started here. Okay. All that being said, let's see if I can try it this way today, where I can do the read option. And I'm going to try and move. See, the only thing I worry about is that if I do this, then you might not be able to see everything. Let's see. Guess we'll try it like this and hope for the best, huh? Okay. So when we left it off yesterday, or when we left Tuesday, I should say, we just talked about how Alexander had become a pharaoh. Oh my gosh, I just gave you number one. He had become pharaoh when he went to Egypt because they were so excited that he was there that they immediately crowned him because he had been fighting the Persians. They didn't like the Persians. Well, after that, they went and resumed their fight with the Persians again with Egyptian help, and they kicked their butt. Now, eventually, what ends up happening is Darius the third. Now it's like Darius the first's great great grandson or something. He keeps running away, and eventually, what happens is his people are really tired of him constantly running away because number one, it means that they just have to fight again in the future. Then on top of that, when you run away, it doesn't make you look very good. I think we can agree with that, right? So they kill him and they present his body to Alexander thinking, okay, Alexander's been after this guy for a really long time, so he's going to be happy about it. Alexander actually, he becomes very, I don't want to say attached, but he respects Darius and he's really upset that his men would do this. So he actually executes these people and then gives Darius a royal funeral with his own family. Shows a little bit of compassion there. And after the Persians are done, the Greeks now are going to continue to move east. And in their minds, I should say Greeks and Macedonians, they're going to keep moving east. And in their minds, they've taken out the greatest power in the world. So everything else should be easy from here on out, right? Persians were the biggest land empire by far. They destroyed them relatively easily. But they're going to come into some problems. And you can see one of those problems right in the middle here. The people of India have war elephants. There is a specific breed or a species of elephant known as the Indian elephant. And they have trained it over time to be used as a war machine. And this is something the Macedonians certainly had little to no experience with. It's also something that's going to be seen as a big threat to the phalanx because when you group all your people shoulder to shoulder and there's a big animal that can stomp around and create massive amounts of damage, standing close to each other doesn't really help you out, nor does shields when something's got thousands of pounds of crushing power, right? But still, things are going relatively smooth. Every single time Alexander wins, he has the same set of rules for everybody else. Look, you can do whatever you did beforehand, that's fine. But just remember, I'm your ruler now, and you need to make sure that you show that I'm the one that you answer to above everything else. Otherwise, as you were. Pause. Now, in India, Alexander loses someone very close to him, and it was his horse, Bucephalus. Now, Bucephalus is a legendary figure because, according to the story, Alexander actually trained this horse when he was 12 years old. And they had become, obviously, it was like just as important to him as like a best friend, right? Think of it like a pet, but like times 100, right? And when Bucephalus died, he was old, but he was still, a relatively good war horse. So it was killed while Alexander was riding him, and he was so upset by it, he named a city after it. But Bucephalus too was important to the story because his father, whom he didn't get along with very much, but still was, King Philip, right? He was great Macedonian leader. He said that because Alexander was able to tame this untamable horse at such a young age, that there is no kingdom that he wouldn't be able to conquer. Now, it's unclear whether this actually happened or not, but it is a great story and it shows his greatness at a very, very young age. So by the time that he dies, this is Alexander the Great's empire. Okay, Macedon, Pella, where he was born, starts here, and essentially, he is going to be all the way out here to the Indus River and the Hydaspes, all the way down in India. Now, as you can see, there are lots of Alexandrias that are on this journey here. Alexander, in the end, is going to name 18 cities Alexander, and then, as we just said, he names one after his horse as well. So clearly, he has a very strong opinion of himself and his accomplishments to name 18 cities after himself. The number one city, Alexandria, is going to be this one here in Egypt. It's going to end up becoming Egypt's capital, and it's going to be by far the most cultured city in the world for hundreds of years to come. All right, just another look at the exact same thing here. And this one shows a couple more of the Alexandrias. And any of these Greek Parthenon-like buildings here in the key are going to be cities that were founded by Alexander that didn't even exist until he showed up there himself and created them. Of course, they're going to have his image everywhere. But eventually, the Macedonian troops have had enough. And at the Indus River, looks like that might be number 3. At the Indus River, the Macedonians, or the Greek-speaking troops, say, Alexander, we're done, bro. We've been away from our families for like 10 years. We took care of the Persians, which is really what we wanted to do in the first place. This whole conquer the entire world thing doesn't really matter to us anymore. And in the beginning, Alexander gets very upset and he pushes them further until they have a horrible, horrible confrontation on what's known as the Hydaspes River in India. And even though they win, Alexander realizes that they're not going to be able to go much farther. And he decides to turn around. And when he turns around, for some reason, rather than going the same way they came, where it was relatively okay weather-wise, they go to one of the most forbidding places on earth and walk through the desert in southern Iran and Iraq today. And it was brutal, and a lot of people died. So by the time they finally got back to the Persian capital, they were really upset with him. Also, his best friend on the journey, Hephaestion, who they've been best friends since the Bucephalus days, he died of a fever. And after that, Alexander was just crestfallen. It was honestly like a brother had died. He was not the same person after this. There are lots of accounts of really bad behavior, killing other people in the ranks that made him upset, and even starting to drink lots of amounts of alcohol on a regular basis. This was a very, very difficult thing for him to deal with, even worse than his horse. So now he makes an interesting move. He decides to take the capital of his empire and put it in Persia, their old capital of Babylon or Babylonia. And this upsets a lot of the Greek people, right? Because what they were thinking was they were showing Greek or Macedonian dominance all over the world. So why are they making their capital here in Babylon or in Persia? It just didn't seem right. And then after that, he married one of Darius's daughters as to say, look, we're going to intermingle our royal line and we are going to have it be mixed of Greek and Persia. And his troops didn't like that either, especially considering that he forced a lot of them to take Persian wives. A lot of them already had Greek or Macedonian wives back home, and they didn't appreciate that.
Now, he's going to die at 33 years old. And it doesn't look like there's foul play involved. Some people say that they think he was poisoned. Some people think that he died of a fever, the same fever that his friend Hephaestion got. And there are some people that believe that because of the drinking that he had done since Hephaestion had died, that ended up killing him. I can't tell you what it is. My personal opinion is I think he had a fever because I know that there was a lot of accounts of fevers going through his army at that time. But what I will tell you is that he didn't have a son. And if you're looking at number 4, big deal because he doesn't have what's known as an heir. So there isn't one person who is going to have the claim to take it, right? And this is exactly why he got his empire at such a young age when his dad died quickly, right? So now it's going to be taken by his generals and they're going to start fighting. Because Alexander's last breath when they asked him, "Sire, who shall take control? We need you to tell us." All he said was, and this is very dramatic, right? But he reaches his hand up in the air and says, "Give it to the strongest." And he dies right after that. Well, who's the strongest? Really vague. So they fight amongst each other. Eventually, they come to the conclusion that the best option is to just split it up into 3 parts. So, this is where it's going to be split up. It's going to be split between its 3 main generals. There's going to be Seleucus, and that's going to be he's going to get the old Persian Empire. There's going to be Ptolemy, who's going to take Egypt, and Ptolemy's family is going to rule in Egypt until Rome rises like 300, 400 years later. Then Antigonus is going to take the Antigonid Empire, which is going to be the original Greek kingdom, which is going to be the smallest, least powerful, but at least it's home. Now, once again, just looking at Alexander's death, why did he die? It says it's a fever, but so long ago you could make the argument there's a lot of different things. But I will say that Alexander had made a lot of enemies at the time of his death, mainly because of the things we talked about, right? Pushing the troops past where they wanted to go, making them take Persian wives. Then when finally agreeing to have them go home, taking them through the most forbidding desert on earth just to prove a point, right? People had gotten sick of him, and he definitely didn't have that same gusto or that same belovedness from his men that he had had in the beginning. He was definitely a changed person. And once again, when you talk about somebody who has a very strong personality as a leader, that can cause some problems, right? If you can't put your own stuff aside for the good of your people, people are going to start to resent you for it. Pause. So the empire is going to split, and even though there is going to be competition and it's not going to be as together as it was during Alexander's lifetime, one of the things that becomes really important is that all of these areas start using Greek as their predominant language. And when you have a language of trade, you can trade way more than goods between nations. And really, the main thing that's going to be shared are ideas. And there's going to be ideas really in 2 areas. Number 1, we see the rise of art and architecture that's Greek-like all over the world. It's obviously it's how they've done things back in Greece, and now that they have Greek leaders, they're going to expect that that's going to be the predominant culture. But then we're also going to see it in ways of study and education as well. Pause. Again, just another shot of Alexander's empire all the way towards the end. At the time, the largest land empire in history. It's going to be broken by Genghis Khan. That's not going to be until like 1,500 years later. So it's a pretty good record when you have it for 1,500 years, if you ask me. And then these are going to be where the 3 kingdoms are. Antigonus is up here, Ptolemy down here, and then Seleucus over here. Same thing again. So this would have been a Hellenistic city in Asia. We know that it was founded probably by Alexander himself, but it's really interesting to see Greek columns and Greek style of architecture like thousands of miles away from Greece. And there's no mistaking it, right? If it weren't for Alexander and his men bringing these ideas out there, it would have never occurred this far away from Greece. So it's living proof. Well, I mean, it's ruins, but it's proof of the impact that Alexander had on the world and what he did. Okay, so this last thing here, Hellenism. Now, when you call someone a Hellene or you say the Hellenistic age, they're actually referring to Helen of Troy or Helen of, well, originally Sparta. And Helen was a Greek person, right? And you're reading the Iliad right now, and she is the person who was taken or runs away with Paris to Troy, and that's what starts the Trojan Wars, right? So a Hellene is somebody who is a Greek. We call it the Hellenistic Empire and not the Greek Empire because, well, the Macedonians aren't technically Greek, right? But they have Greek culture. So what we're going to see here is in science and math, there are going to be some huge advancements made because of these different areas coming together, bringing their ideas. Like we're going to see Aristarchus, who's going to be somebody who I believe was in the Persian area, and he comes up with the heliocentric theory. Euclid is going to be in the Antigonid Empire, and he's going to come up with the idea of actual formalized geometry. And then in Syracuse, which is going to be a Greek holding out in Sicily, which is by Italy, Archimedes is going to come up with the pulley. And then obviously Hellenistic art, we see Greek theater, architecture, sculpture, things like that brought to all other areas of the world. And so the Hellenistic period is known as the time where Greek culture is the predominant amongst the entire world. But the benefit is that they really wanted to incorporate other ideas from these places they came in contact with, and it allowed for advancements at a much faster rate than it would have been just if they were on their own. Hope that helps for number 5. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just remember you do have your weekly assessment. It's going to be posted at 3 today, and I'm looking at it right now, and it says it's posted for 8, so I'm going to have to fix that. Make sure you go through your notes, get your exit ticket done before you do it. Just remember, we don't have school Monday again, so we'll come back on Tuesday. But the goal is that we're going to be probably using our time next week to do our mid-carta. So it should be kind of light on the content, and I hope that'll be very helpful considering that we did have a pretty tough week here, and I appreciate your effort. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to stop now so that you are able to get started on your exit ticket and finish your ed puzzle. So have yourselves a great weekend. Once again, make good choices, and we'll see you back on Tuesday to discuss what we're doing with our mid-carta. All right. See you later, everybody.